A betrayal or an act of courage. Conservative MP Matt Genereux is joining the Liberal caucus, the third Tory MP to cross the floor in as many months.
Welcome, Matt. Welcome to the government team.
As Prime Minister Mark Carney welcomes another defected Conservative MP to the government benches, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wrote in a social media post, quote, Mark Carney is trying to seize a costly Liberal majority government that Canadians voted against in the last election through dirty backroom deals. And, quote, Matt Genereux has betrayed the people of Edmonton Riverbend. Liberal Industry Minister Melanie Joly did not hesitate to fire back.
He just needs to be able to keep his own MPs in his own party. It's his own problem.
So could the Liberals eke out a majority in the coming months? And what do the Tory defections mean for Poilievre's leadership? Our Sunday strategy session is here. Lisa Raitt is a former Conservative deputy leader and current vice chair and managing director of global investment banking at CIBC. Scott Reid is former communications director to Prime Minister Paul Martin, and Tom Mulcair is former leader of the federal NDP. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. I do want to start on this floor crossing. What does the events of this week tell you about the state of play between the Conservatives and the Liberals, Tom?
Tells me that the Liberals are fighting very hard to get the majority that the voters didn't give them, and there is an ethical and democratic problem with that, because the key thing that they're going after, it's not that 1 or 2 seat majority is going to change that much. They've got to be on their guard all the time. But you get control of the parliamentary committees, and that's where the work gets done, and that's where legislation goes forward or it doesn't. You know, there's a group of people, I know you've interviewed them already, who have wrote a great book called No I in Team, and they went through all the cases of floor crossing, and they came up with a simple idea. There should be like maybe a 6-month cooling off period before you can actually join the caucus and be counted as being part of that caucus. I think that they're on to something. Those would be simply the rules within Parliament. Parliamentarians can make whatever rules they want. And I think there's something missing in our system when it's that easy to cross the floor. By the way, I have nothing but good things to say about Matt Genereux, one of the kindest, most capable parliamentarians I've ever had the pleasure of working with. But there's something wrong with our system when we allow it that much and make it that easy.
Scott, what are your thoughts on that? And from a strategic perspective, what does it tell you right now about the state of play?
Well, I mean, I hear what Tom is saying, but look, you don't play basketball with a football, and the rules are what they are, and they permit floor crossings, and they've happened to the benefit of this party or that party. The Conservatives have been beneficiaries in the past, and the Conservatives, as we see in these past few days, have also watched it work to their disadvantage. You know, Pierre Poilievre can spend his time following Tom's lead there and just yell at the referee. But where's that going to get him? The fundamental issue is, how are you going to fix this? What are you going to do, Pierre Poilievre? You lost an election you were supposed to win. You lost a riding that was supposed to be yours in your pocket for decades. And now you're on the brink of losing a majority in the House of Commons. And it is because people who are elected under your banner only a year ago have decided they would rather cross the floor, and they are giving an explicit vote of non-confidence in your leadership. And right now, Poilievre looks paralyzed in the face of it. There really is no reaction. You know, a little dismiss it as unimportant, discredit the people that have been involved, but ultimately that doesn't get you anywhere. How do you get back on a winning track? How do you rally confidence within your party, your caucus? How do you rally confidence in the broader public when you're trailing badly in terms of preferred prime minister? And I just think all of this makes him look weak, and the inability to respond to it, the inability to bridge the gaps in the voter coalition that he's built within the Conservative Party. And they're on very clear display right now. They are doing nothing, and it's been a steady erosion since November. And if he keeps doing nothing, he is going to lose that majority. He may end up losing his job, and he certainly is going to lose that hope that he's had since he was 16 years old of being prime minister.
Do you agree, Lisa, that that is the trajectory? And what is your, I guess, prescription, if so, for blunting that narrative?
I don't. And Scott must have had a terrible breakfast today to be so negative about the whole thing, I have to say.
Oh.
The reality is that you cannot underestimate the allure of a government as part of the reason why you want to cross the floor. It's not 100% about Pierre Poilievre here. You can't lie it all at his door. Being in government gives you a whole bunch of avenues of expertise, and it also gives you some avenues of doing different things that you couldn't do before. We always say the worst day in government is better than your best day in opposition. And as a result, that's an attractive. However, all that being said, there is no question that there is work to be done within the Conservative caucus. And it's not just the leader, it is actually all the caucus members. One of the things that you must think about when you're thinking about crossing the floor is, am I leaving all of my friends behind? So you have to wonder, what kind of interpersonal relationships are really bringing the Conservatives together? It's not just about whether or not you have a bond up and down with the boss. It's about what kind of web is keeping you together across Ontario or across the Maritimes. That's important as well. So the caucus as a whole has to think about what they're going to do to make sure that every player on their team is happy with the team. And if they're not, figure out what they can do to help out.
I totally understand that point, Tom, but I also remember covering the last 18 months of Justin Trudeau. And every time an MP in that caucus spoke out against Justin Trudeau's leadership, you know, our questions and our focus was very much on the vitality or lack thereof of that leadership. What is your view of Pierre Poilievre's right now?
I think that there are serious problems for Mr. Poilievre with regard to his caucus. It was one thing for him to get a huge majority of his sympathizers in Calgary, but it's quite another thing for him to convince the people who are going to be on the front line in the next election that he can get them reelected and he can get the Conservatives elected as a government. The tail of the tape in this one, Vashi, is not the party versus party. In fact, that speaks in favor of a relatively strong Conservative Party right now because they're within hailing distance of the Liberals. The real issue is likability, whether or not Canadians see in Mr. Poilievre someone who can be their prime minister. And frankly, Mark Carney versus Pierre Poilievre on that level, it's not even close. The caucus knows that. They paid a heavy price. I mean, he had a very heavy hand when he was 28% ahead in the polls. Caucus was pushed around, not allowed to talk, told what to say when they were allowed to talk. It was very, very ham-fisted. I don't think that the average member of that caucus sees himself or herself in that leadership of Poilievre. They don't believe they can win the next election. And frankly, a lot of the people that I've spoken with outside of that caucus, but who are, you know, lifelong Conservatives, have the same feeling that Mr. Poilievre's just not going to be able to win an election and become Prime Minister of Canada. And that's what this is about.
I'll note very quickly, a lot of them did jump to his defense, certainly on social media over the last few days, but not the three who crossed the floor, apparently. I do want to switch gears, Scott, and get everyone's quick take, if I could, on the big Supreme Court decision. Symbolically very big, I guess I'll say. What is your view in the medium to long term about what it means for Canada?
I think actually in the medium to long term is particularly encouraging. And, you know, as Lisa is quick to point out, I am usually a pessimistic cat. And the reason I feel optimistic about it is that I think it is visible and demonstrable that Donald Trump is weakening. His position is weaker. The options left available to him, 10% tariff for a handful of days, the options available are harder. They're going to take longer to implement. His electoral position is eroding. And all of these things offer to us not an immediate win. A number of the tariffs remain in place. But in the context of the CUSMA renegotiation, in the context of over the medium and long term, what are Canada's prospects? Do we have more leverage or less leverage? And I would say this, we have more leverage after the Supreme Court ruling, after Congress voted to not permit the president to move forward with these tariffs. Every indication since the beginning of January is that Donald Trump's authority and his ability to bully and demand things and have them happen is weakening. So what's bad for Trump is good for Canada, gives us more options, more opportunities in those negotiations.
Lisa, what's your read on the decision?
I think Scott is right. I'm going to build off of it too. I'm going to say that it also gives a lot more breathing room and runway to the current government in order to get some kind of a deal writ large, be it a new negotiation of CUSMA with Mexico, be it getting 232 tariffs lifted. And they have a lot more ability to have the Canadian public say to them, I mean, look, this guy keeps putting new tariffs on, taking tariffs off. How can you possibly deal with them? It's better just to make sure we get the right deal. I think that is definitely something you hear in the public, as opposed to a year ago, which was, oh my gosh, we have to do things immediately. So the Carney government has a lot more time, and time is on their side.
Even Trump's response today Tom, felt pretty predictable, right? I think everybody knew they had signaled that they would use other levers at their disposal if the court decision went against them. No real surprise there.
No surprise whatsoever in the Trump reaction because he's playing true to form. But the thing that came through the most and struck me is that the American Supreme Court is saying to everybody in that country that Donald Trump has his hand in their pockets. And it's taken quite a while for the average American consumer to get past Trump's line. As to hear Trump tell it, money comes in from other countries and it falls like a gentle rain from heaven straight into the U.S. Treasury. The cost of a sedan, a full-sized car in the United States from November 24, when Trump came back, to November 25 in 1 year went up $10,000 US. The average American is starting to say, hold on, why are things like cars costing so much? He can rail against the Japanese and the Mexicans and the Canadians and so forth, but the average American understands exactly what Ronald Reagan was saying in that video that drove Trump up the wall that Doug Ford played during the World Series. It's that consumers are paying these things. And it's the main point of the Supreme Court. Only Congress is allowed to put their hand in the pockets of American taxpayers. And that's what the rule that Trump broke. He got caught for it. He can rail against the majority of the Supreme Court, a couple of whom he named himself. He can go into all sorts of contortions to say, oh, well, we're going to say from now on, instead of saying this, we're going to say that. It's going to be a national security issue, and it's going to be we're dealing with unfair trade practices. And he even said into the microphones, and it'll take 2 years to litigate. So he's played that game his whole life. What's the loophole? How long have I got? How long can I stall this in the courts? The rest of the world is going to keep moving. Donald Trump is going to leave the States much worse off by the time this thing is over. American consumers are finally figuring out they're paying the price for these moves by Donald Trump.
I'll leave it on that note. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the discussion very much. Lisa Raitt, Scott Reed, and Tom Mulcair, our Sunday strategy session.